O traveler of the spirit, seeker of the truth hidden in the everyday, have you ever stopped to contemplate the essence of what you drink, to question the veil that covers perceptible reality? What if I told you that what your eyes perceive as a simple foamy beverage, a mere indulgence for the palate or a catalyst for oblivion, is in truth an arcane compendium of ancestral wisdom, a symbolic portal to the deepest alchemy of being? I invite you to unveil a mystery that has remained hidden from common sight, an ancient teaching engraved in the very substance of beer. Because what we call beer here, in its pristine origin, was never conceived as a drink of leisure, but as a gift from the gods, a sacred elixir, a bridge to the invisible. Since the dawn of civilization, on the Mesopotamian plains, where the Tigris and Euphrates wove the destiny of nascent empires, beer was not just sustenance, it was a liquid hymn. The Sumerians, guardians of the earliest cosmic knowledge, dedicated their songs to Ninkasi, the goddess of fermentation, venerating her as the forger of a divine nectar. In ancient Egypt, beneath the impassive gaze of the pyramids, this bubbling elixir stood as an offering to the gods, a tangible symbol of abundance, fertility, and the eternal promise of life beyond the Nile. And in the misty Nordic lands, where brave warriors dreamed of Valhalla, beer and mead were not mere potions. They were the very drink of immortality, the essence that ensured eternal life, the echo of the gods resonating in every sip. Isn't it fascinating how such a seemingly mundane substance could carry such a numinous burden? How its existence was intrinsically linked to the highest aspirations of the human spirit? Herein lies the key to our inquiry, the revelation that will transform your perception not only of beer, but of existence itself. The alchemy of fermentation. This process, which we observe with indifference today, is a living metaphor for spiritual death and rebirth, a primordial dance of transformation. The grain, that dense, earthly matter, must die, disintegrate, to be reborn in a new form, a liquid with spirit, rising from the gross to the subtle. It is in this transmutation that the four fundamental elements unite. Earth, represented by the sacrificial grain. Fire, the heat that catalyzes the brew. Air, the vital breath that fuels the bubbles and allows the yeast to breathe. And water, the universal solvent that dissolves the dense and gives rise to the new. Do you now understand that every sip of this ancient brew is a lesson in life itself, a reminder of the eternal cycle of creation and destruction, of the constant metamorphosis of being? For millennia, beer, with its veil of foam and intoxicating spark, was a bridge to the unseen, a ritual tool used to weaken the iron chains of the rational mind and open the portals of spiritual perception. But alas, times change, and with them, the consciousness of humanity. We have witnessed the sad parable of the shift from the sacred to the profane, how what was once an elixir of divine connection has been degraded to a mere commodity, an object of mass consumption stripped of its soul. The modern tragedy lies not in the existence of beer, but in its use. We no longer drink it to remember who we are, to honor our connection to the divine, but to forget what we are, to sink into an existential anesthesia that numbs the pain rather than heals the spirit. We have confused medicine with palliative, awakening with lethargy, but not all is lost. The symbol remains, immutable, waiting to be rediscovered. Beer, in its deepest essence, still contains the unshakable teaching of transformation, the promise of inner alchemy. The same substance can be a key that opens the doors of perception, or a lock that locks consciousness. It all depends on the conscious intention, the heart of the user. Here in this space of ancient wisdom, we will reveal the keys to re-enchanting your life, to applying the lesson of fermentation to your own existence, learning to let go of the old to make way for the new. We will show you how to turn every everyday act into a sacred ritual, how to discern between escape and communion, and how to regain the ability to see the extraordinary and divine in the ordinary. Because truly, The secret lies not in the substance itself, but in our gaze, in the way we perceive the world. Prepare, then, to transform every moment of your life into an act of power, beauty, and wisdom. If this glimpse of mystery has resonated deep within you, I invite you to join this journey. Like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to our channel so that no piece of this ancient puzzle is hidden from you. The real journey begins now. Beloved seekers of veiled gnosis, allow me to begin this journey along the intricate paths of hidden truth with a statement that may baffle your rational intellect, but that will resonate in the deepest chambers of your spirit. Beer, in its purest and most primal essence, was never conceived simply as a beverage. No, its purpose transcends mere hydration or the ephemeral delight of the senses. From the dawn of civilization, in the Sumerian temples where Ninkasi, the goddess of beer, was honored, to the Celtic rites where mead infused prophetic visions, this fermented substance has been a portal, a sacred vehicle for the expansion of consciousness, a bridge between the tangible and the numinous. It is a liquid hieroglyph, a minor arcana in the great tarot of existence, whose decoding invites us to an alchemical transformation of being. Ancient wisdom, whispered through millennia, reveals that what we consider profane today originally held a deeply sacred character, imbued with lofty intentions and ritual practices. It is not just barley and hops, it is the spirit of the earth and sky intertwined, fermenting not only sugars, but also the barriers of our ordinary perception. It is the art of transmutation inherent in the very process of its creation, reflecting the soul's journey from raw matter to enlightenment. This Gnostic perspective urges us to look beyond the veil of appearances, to discover the hidden meaning in every sip, in every rising bubble, reminding us that the universe is a vast web of symbols waiting to be read by those with eyes to see and hearts to understand. Beer, therefore, becomes a mirror, a catalyst for spiritual awakening, inviting introspection that reveals the intrinsic connection between the macrocosmic and the microcosmic, between external ritual and inner alchemy. Consider the elixir that, in the hands of the ancient Egyptians, transcended mere nutrition to become a rite of communion with the divine. For them, brewing beer was a sacred act, an emulation of the creative process of Osiris, the god of resurrection and fertility, who, according to hieroglyphic texts kept in the temples of Karnak and Luxor, was the first to teach humanity the art of fermentation. Imbuing this liquid with an immanent vital energy, it was not a drink for leisure, but an essential component in offerings to the gods, a catalyst for the mind-body-spirit connection in their most intimate and public ceremonies. Priests and priestesses used it to induce altered states of consciousness, not for simple intoxication, but to facilitate astral travel, prophecy, and communication with the beyond, imbuing each sip with a conscious intention directed towards spiritual awakening. Ancestral wisdom, recorded on forgotten papyri and in the foundations of ancient pyramids, reveals that this concoction was a bridge to the duat, a means to purify the soul and prepare the body for transmutation. It was the liquid manifestation of divine abundance, an alchemical tool for the elevation of the being, where the profane of matter united with the sacred of the spirit, distilling a profound truth that the everyday, with the proper intention, can be transformed into a portal to the transcendent. This is the echo of a hidden truth that still resonates in today's esoteric practices, waiting to be rediscovered, inviting us to see beyond the veil, to feel the ancestral vibration in every drop. Do you think this is the only liquid rite that antiquity bequeathed us? Let me guide you now through the veils of time, to a land where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers wove the cradle of ancient civilizations, a land we call Mesopotamia. Here, beer was not merely a brew, but the liquid echo of divine will, a sacred elixir flowing from the hands of the gods themselves to humanity. If in Egypt the rite was woven with Sekhmet and Osiris, in the vastness of Sumeria and Babylon, this fermented nectar found its origin in the essence of Ninkasi, the revered goddess of beer and fermentation. This was not a casual invention of human ingenuity, but a cosmic revelation, a gift bestowed to uplift the spirit and nourish the body, granting a palpable connection with the transcendent. Clay tablets, repositories of ancient wisdom that defies oblivion, whisper stories of how the creation of beer was an act of primordial alchemy, where grains, yeast, and water were transformed not only into an intoxicating beverage, but into a vehicle for expanded consciousness, a key to unlocking mysteries and accessing higher planes of existence. It was a constant reminder of divine abundance and the sacred interconnectedness of all matter, a ritual in itself that invited the drinker to participate in the transmutation. The famous hymn to Ninkasi, more than a mere ode, is a true esoteric cartography, an alchemical formula disguised as poetry. This text, reverently deciphered from Sumerian tablets, not only details the beer-making process with astonishing precision, but also interweaves each step with profound mystical symbolism. Every ingredient, every action, from the malting of the barley to the final filtration, becomes a metaphor for inner transformation, the purification of the soul, and the journey toward spiritual awakening. Fermentation itself, that miraculous process where the inert is animated, is the quintessence of alchemical transmutation. Profane matter is elevated into a new form, infused with a vital energy or prana that endows it with almost magical properties. The Sumerians saw it not as a simple beverage, but as a conduit, a catalyst for self-knowledge and the mind-body-spirit connection. They drank with conscious intention, not to dissolve reason in intoxication, but to expand consciousness, to induce visions, to dialogue with ancestors and deities. It was a rite of re-enchanting life, of infusing every moment with sacred purpose, of seeing the divine in the earthly. Beer in Mesopotamia transcended the purely religious sphere to permeate every fiber of society, from law to economics, while always retaining an aura of the sacred. In the Code of Hammurabi, one of humanity's oldest and most fundamental legal texts, we find strict regulations on the production and consumption of beer, underscoring its vital importance. It was the livelihood of workers, the reward of warriors, and the essential offering in temples dedicated to the countless deities of the Mesopotamian pantheon. Celebrations, communal banquets, and the most intimate ceremonies all revolved around this divine nectar. But beyond its social or economic function, beer acted as a unifier, a substance that, when shared, strengthened bonds, dissolved barriers, and fostered a collective consciousness. It was believed that by drinking together, individuals shared a common life force, a common divine blessing, allowing them to transcend their individual identities and merge into a shared mystical experience. It was a practice that fostered not only material, but also spiritual abundance, a path to achieving inner peace and holistic well-being through ritual. Let's pause for a moment on the esoteric interpretation of this process. Isn't fermentation a mirror of our own inner alchemy? Much later, Gnostic and Hermetic currents would speak of the transmutation of coarse matter into refined spirit, a concept that the Mesopotamians already experienced in every barrel of beer. Consider yeast, that microscopic entity that seems to possess its own conscious intention, transforming sugars into alcohol and gas, an act of small magic that releases the essence or spirit of the grain. For the ancients, drinking beer meant assimilating this spirit, infusing the body with that transformative vital energy. It wasn't a simple beverage, but a practice for conscious living, an exercise in self-mastery where drunkenness was handled not as an end, but as a means to achieve altered states of consciousness in a controlled and purposeful manner. It was the path to liberation, the dissolution of worldly bonds, to open oneself to ancestral wisdom. Through this ritual, the drinker sought inner power, a deep connection with their higher self, a spiritual awakening that promised the understanding of hidden truths and the experience of the divine. Thus, Mesopotamian beer emerges before our eyes, not as a mere cultural invention, but as a sophisticated conduit for the vital energy of the cosmos, a tool of transformation and transmutation with deep roots in the spiritual philosophy and currents of the time. Its preparation and consumption were sacred rituals, acts of conscious intention designed to re-enchant life, infusing it with meaning and purpose. By ingesting this elixir, it was believed that one absorbed not only physical nourishment, but the very essence of divinity, facilitating the mind-body connection and spiritual awakening. The hymns to Ninkasi were not just recipes, but manuals for holistic well-being, guides to the liberation of the spirit and the attainment of inner peace and abundance on all planes of existence. Each sip was an act of union between the sacred and the profane, where matter rose to meet spirit, revealing that the universe itself is a constant act of alchemy, a perpetual dance of creation and transformation. This is a truth that resonates even today, an ancestral wisdom waiting to be rediscovered. But do you think this is the only culture that encapsulated its secrets of inner alchemy in such an everyday concoction? What other elixirs await in the forgotten annals to reveal their true power? Precisely, my initiate. If we raise our gaze toward the eternal sands of the Nile, we discover that the fabric of this ancestral wisdom was woven with even more intricate threads. In the heart of ancient Egypt, beer, known as heket or heneket, transcended its function as mere sustenance to become a symbol of unprecedented depth, a vehicle of transformation and abundance as fundamental as the river's floods. It was not just any drink. It was the blood of the earth, a gift from the gods, infused with vital energy. The hieroglyphic texts, those petrified codices of a mystical philosophy and currents, reveal that beer was a favorite offering to the deities, a tangible bridge between the sacred and the profane, capable of nourishing the Kayanba of the deceased and ensuring life in the afterlife. Its manufacturing process, an act of alchemy, reflected the cosmic cycle of death and rebirth. The Egyptians didn't just brew it, they revered it, intertwining it with fertility rites, associating it with the goddess Hathor, the Lady of Intoxication, whose annual festival was an explosion of altered consciousness and divine connection. This wasn't a simple ritual of indulgence, but a conscious practice, a quest for liberation and spiritual awakening. Beer in Egypt was, in essence, the liquid manifestation of the belief in eternal life and constant regeneration. But do you think its power was limited to the living and the dead? Or was there a deeper inner power, an even more closely guarded secret in its bubbling depths? An enigma of Gnosticism or Hermeticism waiting to be unraveled at the heart of the most sacred rituals. The enigma of the hidden power of sacred beverages that veiled intrigue we posed finds a resplendent echo in the misty sagas of the North, where Valhalla is not merely a final destination but a promise, a state of being nourished and perpetuated through divine elixirs. The ancient Norse peoples, imbued with profound ancestral wisdom, saw in mead not just a simple intoxicating nectar, but the very drink of immortality, the ethereal flow that sustained the eternal life of the Einherjar, the warriors chosen by Odin for posthumous glory. In their golden halls, under the shield roof and the song of the Valkyries, the cup of mead was a constant ritual, a perpetual renewal of vital energy that allowed them to await the final battle of Ragnarok with full awareness and unwavering inner power. This was not an act of simple indulgence, but a conscious practice of preservation and preparation, a manifestation of the philosophy and currents that united earthly value with divine transcendence. where each sip was a reminder of the pact with destiny and the abundance promised beyond the threshold of mortal life. Beer, though perhaps less exalted than mead in the epics of gods and heroes, nevertheless shared this substratum of the intertwined sacred and profane, serving as the daily sustenance that prepared body and spirit for communion with the mystical, a bridge between the mundane plane and the revelations that awaited in dreams and the deepest visions. But was this symbolism limited to physical ingestion, or did it transcend into an even more subtle inner alchemy? A key to spiritual awakening, hidden in the very essence of the transformation of grain and honey into these elixirs, inviting the adept to a conscious life that goes beyond the visible. Yes, beloved seeker of truth, the alchemy hidden in fermentation is the mirror of our own spiritual death and rebirth. Consider the grain, raw material that must be ground, immersed in water, stripped of its original form. Is this not the negredo, the dark phase of putrefaction, indispensable for transmutation? Into this primordial cauldron, the conscious intention of the brewing alchemist, like an officiant of an ancient rite, infuses his will. Here the veils are torn, revealing that the substance is not annihilated, but prepared for a new existence, enriched by inherent wisdom. The yeast, that invisible agent, emerges as the spiritus mundi, the divine spark that breathes life. In the darkness of the vat, it transforms sugars into alcohol and carbon dioxide. Simultaneous decomposition and recreation, a Gnostic lesson. Light is born from darkness, consciousness from unconsciousness. This mysticism urges us to embrace our symbolic deaths, the dissolution of the ego, allowing a new, pure and elevated being to awaken. It is albedo, the whiteness that follows darkness, purification by transformative fire. Beer is the elixir of transmutation, the quintessence of a process that mirrors spiritual awakening. But does this metamorphosis end with drinking, or is there an even higher phase? A sublimation revealed only through conscious intention while drinking. A cultivated self-mastery that activates a profound mind-body connection. Precisely, beloved seekers, the culmination of this alchemy of the grain does not reside merely in the bottle or the glass, but in the sanctuary of your own being. The beverage, once transmuted from dense matter to liquid essence, awaits its true purpose, to become a catalyst for your own inner alchemy. It is not merely an act of ingestion, but a rite of union, a bridge forged with conscious intention. Here, the vital energy of the grain, now liberated and empowered, seeks to merge with your own consciousness. Think of the ancient Dionysian cults, where wine was not a mere intoxicant, but a gateway to altered states of perception, a tool for unveiling truths hidden in the ether and in the soul. Beer, in its humble origins and evolution, shares this mystical lineage. It is not for forgetting, but for remembering, not for stupor, but for spiritual awakening. This is where Zen philosophy intertwines with Hermeticism. The simple act of drinking is transformed into an active meditation, a conscious practice and focus that re-enchants everyday life. Each sip, if approached with conscious intention, becomes a whisper of the universe, a vibration that harmonizes your inner power. It is the moment when the sacred and the profane dissolve, revealing an underlying unity that ancestral wisdom has bequeathed to us. Those veils of illusion fade before the purified gaze, revealing that there is nothing inherently mundane, only perceptions limited by the inertia of the mind. By infusing this liquid with your full attention, you not only absorb its nutrients, but its profound symbolism, its intrinsic essence of transformation and transmutation. True self-mastery lies not in deprivation, but in mastery over your own actions, elevating them from the automatic to the deliberate, to an authentic, conscious life. This is true gnosis, not just knowing, but feeling the intricate mind-body connection. Invisible ties that unite the macrocosm of the universe with the microcosm of your body, transcending mere physical existence, alchemists sought the elixir of eternal life. What if this elixir were not a magical liquid that granted physical immortality, but a state of expanded consciousness that allowed you to experience eternity in every present moment? This leads us to the profound revelation that beer, this golden liquid, can be a vehicle, a bridge to holistic well-being, not because of its chemical components per se, but because of the intention with which it is prepared and, crucially, consumed. It is in this act of ritualized ingestion that the prana or chi contained in the grain and released during fermentation can be consciously assimilated, empowering your own life force. This understanding, jealously guarded in forgotten codices and whispered in the corners of temples, invites us to a deeper reflection. What happens when this vital energy meets a prepared vessel, a consciousness willing to receive and transmute? And even more, how does this encounter manifest itself in the fabric of our reality, in the attainment of an abundance that goes beyond the material and an unshakable inner peace? Isn't this the true purpose of the grain? To die in order to be reborn within us as pure consciousness and liberation. But revelation is only just beginning to unfurl its veils, is it not? Consider now the philosophy and currents of nature itself, the archetype of creation manifested in the humble beer. In its primal essence, this nectar is nothing less than a sacred conjunction of the four cardinal elements, an alchemy in itself, as profound as the mysteries of the universe. The earth is embodied in the grain, that humble present of fertile soil, which, like the human body, is a temple of latent potential. In Hermetic traditions, the earth symbolizes the solid, the manifested, the seat of material experience, the potency of that which must germinate. This grain, inert in itself, is a sealed promise, but it is in the encounter with water, the great universal solvent, that its spirit begins to awaken. Water, which represents emotions and intuition, draws forth the essences of the earth, preparing the canvas for transmutation. Ancient initiation rites involved immersion, seeking to dissolve the old for the emergence of the new, a true spiritual awakening. Then fire, that primordial force that forges souls, enters the scene during the brewing process. The bubbling cauldron is a microcosm of the alchemical crucible, where impurities are burned away and essences are concentrated. Fire is purification. It is the divine spark that activates transformation, elevating matter to a more subtle state, as the Gnostics viewed the purification of the soul. And finally, air, the breath of life, manifests in the bubbles of fermentation, that mystical process where invisible forces breathe vitality into the must. Air is the spirit prana, the subtle energy that connects heaven and earth, facilitating the expansion of consciousness, the liberation from the dense to the ethereal. This vital breath imbues the beverage with its unique character, elevating it to an elixir capable of catalyzing an altered state of consciousness. Thus, each sip is a microcosm of creation, a dance of opposites coming together in unity, an ode to ancestral wisdom. This fusion is not merely chemical, but a profound conscious intention of nature, a cosmic ritual replicated and revered. But what happens when this elemental symphony is performed not only in the vessel, but within your own being, with a conscious intention that seeks to transcend the profane toward the sacred? Understanding this dance is only the threshold. Are we ready for the next step? To decipher how this mind-body connection is activated within us and how it guides us toward the power within. And here we are, on the threshold of a revelation that the mists of time have tried to hide. We have just unraveled the elemental symphony that gives life to beer. But the true alchemy, the one that transforms the spirit, lies not only in the fermented matter, but in the conscious intention that guides it, in the ritual that elevates it from the profane to the sacred. The question that hangs over us, like a dense but promising fog, is precisely this: how does this dance of elements become a bridge to the invisible? a catalyst to weaken the rational mind and open the floodgates of spiritual perception. Ancient wisdom whispers to us that long before modern civilization conceived of drinking as a mere pleasure or escape, the ancients invested it with a transcendent purpose. They weren't seeking vulgar intoxication, but rather a sacred intoxication, an altered state of consciousness that allowed the veil of ordinary reality to fade away, if only for a fleeting moment. It was a tool, a key forged from fire and water, animated by earth and air, to unlock hidden dimensions, to perceive beyond the tangible on an introspective journey that connected the microcosm of the drinker with the macrocosm of the universe. A quest for spiritual awakening that we barely remember today, from the fertile plains of Sumeria to the icy Nordic fjords. Beer, or its fermented analogues, such as mead or chicha, were central elements in esoteric practices and shamanic rites, whose mention in forbidden or veiled texts has come down to us in fragments, but with undeniable resonance. The Sumerian hymns to Ninkasi, the goddess of beer, are not mere culinary recipes but incantations, invocations that describe a sacred process of transformation, where grain is transformed into a divine nectar. In ancient Egypt, scenes in the tombs of the pharaohs not only depict the afterlife, but also the preparation and offering of a fermented beverage, crucial for the soul's navigation through the duat, the underworld, a journey of liberation and reunion with the primordial consciousness. The Celts and Germans, for their part, used mead in their Odin's halls, not for dissipation, but to invoke visions, to connect with their ancestors, to access the source of the Awen, poetic and prophetic inspiration, a mystical gift that revealed the latent inner power. These were not acts of simple consumption, but practices and approaches imbued with a profound conscious intention, where the beverage became a vehicle, a natural entheogen, capable of modulating perception and leading to non-ordinary states of consciousness, thus opening the doors of the subconscious and allowing a more direct connection with the realm of the unseen. A form of practical Gnosticism where direct knowledge of the divine was the ultimate goal. The key to this bridge lies in the elixir's ability to modulate the rational mind, that tireless sentinel of tangible reality, which filters and categorizes everything we perceive, often blocking the subtlest streams of information. Ancient occult wisdom understood that to access higher planes of consciousness, to achieve true spiritual awakening, it was necessary to silence, even temporarily, the incessant monologue of the ego and linear logic. The substances contained in these fermented beverages, in specific doses and ritual contexts, acted as catalysts. The goal was not a loss of control, but rather a reorientation of self-mastery, a deliberate act of surrender to a broader perception. The altered state, induced not only by the substance, but by the mystical environment. Song, dance, repetition, and conscious intention allowed the rational fog to disperse, revealing internal and external landscapes that would otherwise remain hidden. This is the essence of inner alchemy, transforming ordinary perception into a transpersonal vision, transcending the limitation of the physical senses to experience a profound connection with the vital energy that animates the universe, a cosmic prana that flows through everything, a glimpse of the truth that lies beyond the duality of the sacred and the profane. The symbolism of this sacred intoxication transcends the mere ingestion of a liquid. It is a metaphor for the dissolution of boundaries, a reflection of the dissolution of the individual ego into the ocean of collective or divine consciousness. In Hermetic and Gnostic traditions, one speaks of the velum auri, the golden veil that separates the manifest from the unmanifest, the discursive mind from pure intuition. Rituals involving beer and other fermented beverages were deliberate attempts to lift or render translucent this veil, allowing the light of Gnostic truth, direct knowledge, to penetrate the darkness of ignorance. Philosophers such as Plato, speaking of divine mania, recognized states of consciousness that surpassed reason, considering poetry, love, and prophecy as forms of madness inspired by the gods, a concept that resonates deeply with the ritual use of these beverages. It wasn't a denial of reason, but rather a denial of its transcendence, a step beyond its limitations to embrace a more holistic and mystical understanding of existence. Zen philosophy, although not directly linked to fermented beverages, shares this yearning to silence the thinking mind in order to access intuitive wisdom. Satori, a moment of spiritual awakening where truth is revealed in its pure essence, without the mediation of the intellect. Thus, beer in its ritual use stood as a portal, not a final destination. It was the key that unlocked the door of perception, the initial impulse for a journey of internal alchemy, where the rational mind relaxed to allow the higher mind, the spirit, to emerge and guide consciousness to unexplored realms. This ancient practice was not an act of evasion, but an act of confrontation and openness, a deliberate search for truth, for the inner power that resides within every being. The experience of an altered state became a mirror that reflected the possibility of a fuller conscious life, a deeper mind-body-spirit connection, a prelude to holistic well-being. But the true transformation did not occur during intoxication, but in the integration of the revelations obtained, in the reinterpretation of reality from an expanded perspective. The wisdom of the ancestors invites us to reconsider how we use the tools nature offers us, and to remember that conscious intention is the true magic. We have glimpsed how the bridge was built, how it was used to transcend the mundane. But what happens once this bridge is crossed? How is the door of perception kept open once the effect of the elixir wears off? And how does this opening lead us to re-enchant life in its entirety? Not only in moments of ritual ecstasy, but in the very fabric of our daily existence. And so, brothers and sisters of the path, we have drawn back a thin veil over an arcane mystery, a fragment of that ancestral wisdom that lies hidden, not in dusty texts, but in the very fabric of our existence. We have understood that beer, in its deepest and most symbolic essence, was never the end, but the key, the catalyst for an internal transformation. True nectar is not drunk. It is forged in the crucible of the soul, through the conscious alchemy of perception. The question that calls us now is crucial. How does that door of perception hold once the echo of the ritual fades? When the veil of intoxication dissipates, the answer lies in integration, in the self-mastery and conscious intention that each of us decides to apply to our conscious life. The spiritual awakening is not a fleeting flash, but a constant flame that we must fan with every act, every thought, every breath. Zen philosophy whispers the truth to us. The present moment is the only real portal. By infusing consciousness into the everyday, seeing the sacred in the apparently profane, in every sip of water, in every step on the earth, in every glance at a loved one, is where vital energy flows without restriction, where the inner power is fully manifested. True, liberation does not await an isolated mystical ecstasy, but in the ability to re-enchant life in its entirety, to recognize that the totality of our existence is a constant ritual. When the mind-body connection is harmonized with the spirit, when each experience becomes an opportunity for transformation and transmutation, it is then that we access genuine abundance, an unshakable inner peace, and a holistic well-being that transcends mere material conditions. This is Gnosticism in action, the direct knowledge of the divinity inherent in each being, Hermeticism alive in every moment. Thus, beer, that ancient elixir, has served as a metaphor, a mirror to reflect a deeper truth, that we are the alchemists of our own reality. Mastery lies not in mastering the elixir, but in mastering oneself. Could it be that our search for the extraordinary in the exterior blinds us to the magic latent in the ordinary? In every small ritual of our daily lives, waiting to be imbued with our conscious intention to reveal the universe within us. If these words have resonated in your spirit, if the thirst for knowledge and the yearning for awakening compel you, I invite you to join our fellowship of seekers, this brotherhood of souls who dare to look beyond the obvious. Subscribe to our channel, share this message with those whose souls also yearn for the light of truth. By doing so, you not only expand wisdom, but you strengthen the invisible network that binds us together on this path of spiritual awakening. There are many more mysteries to unravel, more veils to lift, and to continue this journey toward enlightenment, I suggest your next path be toward the silence of the gods, how to hear the inner voice through the Zen void. Prepare yourself, for each step is a new revelation.